Thank you. Good afternoon. Last year, you will recall that various amendments to the Municipalities Act 1923 were made to improve the governance of the municipalities, St. George's and Hamilton. These amendments focused on key areas such as the creation of financial instructions, a code of ethics, a council meeting guide, and an asset management plan, among other matters. Also, last year, you'll recall that the Ombudsman raised concerns regarding certain operations of the Corporation of Hamilton in relation to financial management in her report of 13th December 2013, entitled Ombudsman's Own Emotional Investigation into Governance at the Corporation of Hamilton. In light of the grave concerns highlighted by the Ombudsman, acting in my capacity as Minister with responsibility for municipalities, I issued a stewardship notice on 19th of December 2013 pursuant to Section 7B6 of the Municipalities Act 1923, thereby taking over stewardship of the corporation on a temporary basis. At that time, I stated that the order would be lifted once matters like financial instructions were formalized pursuant to the Municipalities Act 1923. The notice specified that, quote, the Minister believes that, in accordance with Section 7B6 of the Act, it is in the public interest to temporarily assume stewardship of the financial administration and treasury services of the corporation, because the services of the corporation are in a poor state due to maladministration, as illustrated by the report of the Ombudsman for Bermuda tabled in the legislature. This morning I can report that the Minister of Finance has issued a set of financial instructions to the Chief Operating Officer of the Corporation of Hamilton that must be used by the Corporation of Hamilton in accordance with Section 7B of the Act with immediate effect to ensure good governance of their finances moving forward. Additionally, this morning I sent a letter to the Chief Operating Officer of the Corporation of Hamilton in accordance with Section 5.1.2 and 5.1.3 of these new financial instructions that formally approved a fiscal budget for 2014-15 that the senior officers of the corporation and I consider reasonable for them to carry out the business of the corporation for this period. As a result of these measures now in place, I can formally advise that today I've lifted the stewardship notice of the 19th of December 2013, which in essence permits the corporation to move on with managing their financial affairs in consultation with me as Minister with responsibility for municipalities where appropriate. The Code of Ethics and Council Meeting Guide are in the final stages of drafting. However, I believe that the most critical piece at this time was the financial instructions being in place to ensure that the corporation could assume their day-to-day functions independent of the ministry, save for areas where ministerial approval is required in those financial instructions. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Minister, can you give us more details on the financial instructions, what they mean to the layman?
Yeah, sure. The financial instructions are close as we can get to those that government has. They basically require certain things to be done, certain procedures and policies to be followed internally to make sure that there's checks and balances in respect of how corporation money is being spent. So, for example, with a budget that needs to be approved by the council and then also approved by the minister. There are layers within those financial instructions as to levels of spending and who can sign checks and who has the authority to spend monies. So, for example, anything that's, say, over $50,000 that is not already pre-approved in a budget, in the budget must be also approved by the ministry, which is somewhat very similar to what goes on in government, where things over $50,000 must be approved by cabinet. So it's basically setting out that set of rules and regulations, as is in the Amendment Act from last year, issued by the Minister of Finance, to ensure that there's no financial impropriety, basically.
Is their budget a public document, in which case would the $100,000 grant for the Mayor's Conference be included?
The line item in that budget did include, from the one that I had approved, did include funds for the Black Mayor's Conference. It's expected that due diligence would be done, and I have been in correspondence through my permanent secretary with the corporation through this period of time. At the moment, that money has not been formally signed off on under the stewardship order. But basically, again, anything that's over $50,000 in respect of some of these would probably need, I believe, under those financial instructions, must be approved by the ministry as well. So it's anticipated, and the corporation has said this repeatedly, that they will continue to do their due diligence before they have that final spend on that particular issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carla, did you have any questions on behalf of Bermuda Broadcasting? No. Michaela, did you have any queries on behalf of Bermuda Sign? Gareth, on behalf of the RG, did you have anything that you'd like to field with the minister?
Just one question.
Mm-hmm.
Gareth, just...
Sorry. How confident are you that the corporation is going to stick to these financial instructions? Is there going to be any further policing required on behalf of your ministry to, you're going to be making sure that the corporation is abiding by these rules?
The financial instructions are something that is laid out in the Municipalities Amendment Act from last year that says that the corporation must follow those financial instructions. Of course, attached to that then are good governance requirements under the various pieces of legislation that are already out there. So it's anticipated that they'll be followed. They have been reviewed by corporation staff internally. They are satisfied with that, and that's the process that needs to be followed. The day-to-day administration of the corporation is and always should have been in the hands of the staff of that corporation, much like government. Government ministers should not be getting involved in day-to-day administration side of government. You set policy, and that's much the same as what should be going on at the Corporation of Hamilton Council, is the council sets policy, and how the money is spent, and check signing authorities and the like are left up to the staff members of government and the staff members of the Corporation of Hamilton. What I will say in relation to St. George's is we're further amending and having a slightly different set of financial instructions for them, because of course their operations are much smaller than that of the Corporation of Hamilton. The Corporation of Hamilton's budget is, I believe, in the region of about $20 million, whereas the Corporation of Hamilton, of course, is about 10%. It's 10% of that, or thereabouts. So that would require a different set of rules and regulations to govern them.
Sorry, can I just have one more go? Do you think the public, who must have been somewhat puzzled and concerned about the report of the Ombudsman, which I don't think is going to be debated in Parliament, is it? That's not the way it goes, is it?
Well, it can be. I'm not sure where we are with that, to be perfectly honest.
There's a lot of stuff in there that concern the public. You've dropped your stewardship rather faster than I think most people would have anticipated. So you must have seen or heard or talked or dialogued on issues that have satisfied you, at least, that this is not quite the nightmare scenario that we've all believed.
I wouldn't quite say that. I would say that when we first put the order in place in December, at that time I made it clear that it was and always has been a temporary order. At that time, I believe I was asked how long did I anticipate that being in place. I had said, I hope not more than 3 months. And the reason I had said that was because you will recall that there had been an agreement following the passing of that act that things like financial instructions had to be in place by certain dates. The corporation had to come back with a version of a set of financial instructions by mid-January of this year, and we had undertaken with the corporation to provide our comments and have everything finalized by the end of this month, if not sooner. So we have now accomplished that in relation to those financial instructions, and you will recall that the stewardship order related specifically to the financial and treasury functions of the corporation. So now that those financial instructions are in place, there is no longer a requirement for us to have a stewardship order, because those financial instructions are now the corporate governing documents for the corporation in terms of how they handle their financial and treasury functions. So we're very satisfied that those should deal with it. And of course, in relation to the question posed earlier, of course we'll keep a running eye on things to make sure that they are being followed. That's what they're there for, to be followed. And the Act is clear about that. Yeah.
Minister, the timing of the lifting of the stewardship and the passing of the legislation recently in the House concerning waterfront properties, pretty close. Any coincidence?
No, it's just a busy time. I mean, these things come together sometimes. We had always said that that this would be done this month, and we've managed to get it done a couple weeks in advance of the end of this month. There is, in fact, another piece that's coming in relation to Parlerville, in relation to a bill that will be a motion that's going to be debated on or tabled on Friday, which is a variation of the development agreement for Parlerville, which extends the life of that development agreement. So it's actually quite a positive thing for that development. And that will be tabled on Friday and then debated the following week to give the developer that much more time that they require to get things up and running. So it's not always negative. Government's also here to help where we have said that we will help. And that's coming next week. So, coincidence.
Since you were asking about development, do you foresee development taking place in Parlerville in your capacity where you sit as minister?
Well, no, that's certainly the hope. There are positive signs that is going in the right direction, but I think that question is best left with those that are involved in that development. What the Act says is that we are to facilitate by tabling documentation in relation to agreements that have a 21-year life or longer. That Act is quite broad, so to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's, if there's amendments to that, it's quite right to bring it to Parliament to be tabled and debated if necessary. But we're simply following the statutory framework that's in place in relation to these things.